أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today is the first of 3 sessions we'll be having discussing the topic of towheed in Islam. And this topic is very broad, so we're going to be covering a whole bunch of different issues related around the issue of belief in God. And of course we're going to be talking about monotheism, the belief in one God, which we will get to tomorrow inshallah. But before that and after that, there's a lot of other questions and criticisms and concerns that people have and we should have ourselves in talking about tawheed. So we're going to start with a little bit of introduction today. We'll get to some of the proofs for the existence of God. We'll cover a few questions that come up in relation to this, and then we'll continue from there. So the first thing that we should do in talking about tawheed, monotheism, or any type of belief is to set the foundation and the ground rules for how we're going to approach this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Surah Bani Israel, chapter 17, verse 84, قُلْ كُلُّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى شَاكِلَتِهِ. Allah says, say, everyone acts according to his nature, according to his disposition. So what we can draw from this is that our actions, our attitudes, our emotions, all draw from our beliefs, from our nature. Whatever we think, whatever we believe, whatever our faith is going to determine how we act. It'll determine how we emotionally react to a situation. So if I believe that a certain action is good, there's more of a chance that I'm going to pursue it. And if I believe that something is harmful to me, it's more of a chance that I'm going to try to avoid it. And the same thing even goes for our emotions. Our emotions are also based on our beliefs. So if I am walking in a crowd and somebody bumps into me, if I believe that that person did it intentionally to hurt me, then I'm going to have some type of angry reaction. But if I believe that it was unintentional, of course I'm going to automatically forgive it and think nothing of it. So even my emotions are determined by my beliefs. So what we do is based on our beliefs, and our beliefs themselves are based on our sources of knowledge. So the study of the sources of knowledge collectively is called epistemology. Epistemology covers questions such as what is possible for us to know, what can we know, what counts as knowledge, what counts as truth, what do I consider as fact and reality, and what authorities do we accept as our sources of truth and as our sources of knowledge. So in general, all human beings, we all have rules for what is possible or what is fantasy, for what we consider truth or what we consider falsehood. And these are rules that we don't consciously deliberate. We automatically incorporate these into our everyday lives. And we usually don't realize how much our environment shapes these rules. So our society, the culture that we live in, the education that we get, the entertainment that we watch, the friends that we hang around with, the family that we associate with, all of these will shape that foundation for the sources of knowledge that we have. And we can say that in our day, in this modern world, the greatest modern deception is that faith and fact are not the same thing. So in our society, in our culture here in Western society, we could say that these two words are diametrically opposed to each other. Fact is something that is true. Fact is something that is real. It's something that is tangible. Faith, on the other hand, is something that you believe in without evidence. It's something that is a hobby for you. It's something that you were born into it, and it is not in the same category as fact. And this is a great deception. So we're taught that truth is determined by empirical science. Of course, all of you know what empirical means, something that is tangible, you can measure, you can weigh, and so on. So God, revelation, religion, the afterlife, morality, None of these things can be known empirically. So with this trick, by combining these together, they say that religion and faith are outside of the scope of reality. So with this trick and this deceit, faith in God is driven out of the category of fact and is put in the category of fantasy. So they wouldn't accept what they couldn't experience physically. They do not accept what they can't experience physically, and these are the same types of objections that people had during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For example, you've all read in Surah Yasin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, chapter 36, verse 78, قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. The people objected to the Prophet, and they said to him, who will give life to the bones when they're rotten? Say, look at these bones. They're dead. There's no way they can come back to life. Or they say in chapter 29, verse 29, قَالُوا ائْتِنَا بِعَذَابِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. They say, bring Allah's punishment on us, because they don't believe in the afterlife. Bring the punishment on us if you are of the truthful ones. If you're telling the truth, show it to us. If I don't see it, I'm not going to believe it. This was the attitude that they had at that time. And this is the attitude that some people have today. And this is what is pushed on us in our society. So faith and fact for the believers is the same thing. So we say that I believe in God because it is a fact, a reality, a truth that God exists. I believe in God because God is real. I believe that God exists because God exists. Same thing goes for Nabuwah, for prophethood, for imamat, divine leadership, for the afterlife, for heaven and hell and the angels. All of these things, we say that these are facts. So to avoid being tricked and deceived, we must know what are our legitimate and valid sources of knowledge. So that instead of living like drones, believing whatever we're told, we are able to think about our beliefs for ourselves. We act and feel according to what belief. So we follow what we believe to be good and we avoid what we believe to be bad. So if we want to improve our actions, if we want to improve our emotions, we have to improve our beliefs. So if I want to make myself into a better person, yes, of course, I'm going to try to change my actions, but at the same time, I should take a step even further back and fix my beliefs as well. If I fix my beliefs, my actions will improve. If I fix my actions, my beliefs will improve. There's a reciprocal relationship between those two. So now, a question arises here, that we say that people act on what they believe. So a question might arise, if people act on what they believe, then how is it that believers can commit evil? So we say we're believers, we believe in Islam, we believe that you're supposed to do good, and we believe that you're not supposed to do bad things. So how is it that somebody can say this and then still commit evil? So religion, we know, forbids evil. If a believer commits evil, then he is going against his own religion. The point to understand here is that a person may claim to believe in the religion and then not obey its commands for several reasons. Some people say they believe, but we know they don't really believe. Or maybe that belief is not as firm and as strong as it should be. Sometimes a person's confession of faith is not sincere. Sometimes people say they believe to please others. Or some people say they believe because it's the way that they were brought up. Their religion is as an inheritance to them. As we know that the majority of people who believe in a certain religion, you can probably guess geographically what religion somebody is going to follow. And this is one of the valid criticisms that atheists have about religions. They say, well, if somebody is born in this country, in this region of this country, there's this % chance that that person will be a Hindu, or a Muslim, or a Christian, or something else. And this is a valid criticism that they have, that most people follow the religion that they follow based on the family they were born into or the geographical region they were born into. Or some people violate the commandments of their religion even though they say they believe, because they try to manipulate the religion to justify their own actions. So there's lots of reasons that people will act against what their religion teaches, but this has no negative effect on the concept that we act on what we believe. So there's also another question that comes up, and it's important for us to clarify this. And there is a saying that people have. They say that if a person has a good heart, it doesn't matter what you believe, right? It doesn't matter what religion you follow, as long as you have a good heart, as long as you're pure at heart. It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or an atheist or a Christian. This sounds very nice, because who doesn't like a good heart? And who doesn't like a good person? So is it true that if a person has a good heart, then it doesn't matter what he or she believes? So we have to take this question and we have to analyze it a little rationally. So we ask a few questions about the question itself. Does a good heart accept falsehood and corruption? Is it possible? Does a good heart not care about what it believes? Is it indifferent? How does a heart become good unless it accepts what is rational, what is reasonable, what is logical, and what is just? So if it doesn't accept justice, can it be a good heart? If it doesn't accept what is rational, what is clearly true, can it be a good heart? No. A good heart accepts truth, and an evil heart accepts evil. So good beliefs are what create a good heart. If I want to have a good heart, I have to make sure that I accept those good beliefs to make my heart good. So good beliefs create a good heart. Bad beliefs will produce a bad heart, and questionable beliefs will create a questionable heart. Confused beliefs will create a confused heart. And then this follows that those good beliefs will turn into good actions, or bad beliefs will turn into bad actions, and so on. So if a person does not know whether his beliefs are right or wrong, he cannot know if his actions are right or wrong. He cannot even know if he has a good heart or not. So we give an example. If I believe that 1 + 1 = 3, what's going to be the result of my life? Let's say we take this and we establish it all over society. If society accepted this, that 1 + 1 = 3, civilization would collapse in a very short time. If we put this concept of 1 + 1 = 3 and we apply it in engineering, we apply it in mathematics, in science, in medicine, all over the place, planes would fall from the sky, the economy would collapse, and medicines would kill people instead of curing them. Why? Because we believe that 1 + 1 = 3. If our basic math is false, everything that follows after that will be false, because this is the foundation of our math. Arithmetic is the foundation of even the highest forms of math. So if the very basic concept of math is wrong, everything that follows will be wrong. And likewise, if our primary beliefs are false, our lives and everything that follow after that will be miserable. And it follows that every tyrant and terrorist is the result of false beliefs. Every evil that occurs in the world is the result of false beliefs. So, saying that I have a good heart will not save me from bad math. I can't say, it doesn't matter what my answers are in the math test, as long as I have a good heart, I should get an A. This doesn't make sense. So having a good heart doesn't save me from bad math, and saying I have a good heart will not save me from having false beliefs. So now we ask, how can we choose the right beliefs? So we must ask ourselves what we said at the beginning. What is truth? What is fact? What is reality? How do I recognize these things? What are my sources of knowledge, so that I can choose the right beliefs and not fall into falsehood? So, for example, when we're talking about the sources of knowledge, what do we mean when we say sources of knowledge? So, for example, as a Muslim, let's say you're with your non-Muslim friend, let's say an atheist, and you guys are together and it's time to pray, and now you have to go perform wudu. So you go perform ritual ablutions, you perform wudu. And your atheist friend says, why do you perform this wudu? Okay, and you say, this is a prerequisite for my prayers. So, who told you that this is a prerequisite for your prayers? What is your source of knowledge here? You say, well, say my marja taqlid that I follow. I read his book of Islamic laws, and he says that in order for me to perform my ritual prayers, I have to perform wudu first. So what's your source of knowledge? Is the mujtahid that you do taqlid of. Or alhamdulillah, if you're a mujtahid yourself, then you're your own mujtahid. So now you say that I have to do wudu to perform my prayers. So now your friend is inquisitive. So, well, why do you pray? And I'm going to say, because it's an obligation in Islam. So where do we get this, that praying is an obligation in Islam? You don't have to go to the mujtahid for this. This is one of the fundamentals of religion in the Quran and the Sunnah. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ. How many times in the Quran do we see the establishing of prayers mentioned over and over in the Quran? So what was your source of knowledge for the wudu? It was your marjay taqlid. What is your source of knowledge? The truth that you're getting, that you have to pray, that it's obligatory, is the Quran. You say it's obligatory in Islam. So now your friend says, why do you follow Islam? And you say, I follow Islam because it's the truth from God. Right? You follow it because it's the truth. So now, what's your source of knowledge here? Your reasoning. Because if you're choosing Islam as the truth, you have to obviously compare it to other religions. And here you can't really use the Quran as your source of knowledge because the other religions will not look to the Quran as an authority. So you have to use a broader authority, which is your reasoning. So now you mention God. And now your friend asks, why do you believe in God? And you're going to say, well, my reasoning shows that everything in existence is a sign of God. So now you're using as your source of knowledge is your reasoning. So now your friend asks you, why do you trust your reasoning? Right, so we're going step by step through our sources of knowledge. It was your marjay taqlid, then it was the Quran, and then it was your reasoning. And now, why the reasoning? So what do you say? You say, we know what we know through reasoning. What is reasoning? Reasoning is what we call a self-evident truth. It's something that is true in itself. It's something for which we do not need proof in order to consider valid. You must accept reasoning as valid, otherwise nothing else is going to make sense. See? If I ask you, why do you use reasoning? How are you going to answer me? By using reasoning. And how am I asking you this question? By using reasoning. So we can no more abandon reasoning as we can abandon being human. It's a part of our essence. This is what defines the human being, is that we use reasoning, we have intellect, we are rational animals, basically. So now we get to this point in our sources of knowledge where we understand that there are certain things that we accept without having to prove them. And it's very possible that there is no proof for these things other than these things themselves. And once we get to this point, we have to stop doubting. We have to understand that to go beyond this point with our questioning, to go beyond this point with our doubt, is going to throw us into confusion, and instead of giving us answers, instead of giving us clarity and truth, it's going to lead us to falsehood. There are certain points where our reasoning says this is the limit that our knowledge can reach, and that we cannot question and go further past this. So it is not a virtue to be in constant doubt. You've probably seen some hashtags, some sayings, doubt everything, question everything. What does that even mean? You can't take that to its logical conclusion. There's limits to questioning and there's limits to doubting. Questioning must be for removing doubt. Questioning must be for learning something. Doubting an established truth is irrational, it's self-contradictory, it's self-defeating. If something is proven true, we don't question it. We take it and we put that as part of our foundation and we keep on building it, we move on. So for example, once God is proven, there's no benefit in continuing to doubt his existence. Maybe I can ask to find further ways of establishing his existence, but the ones that have already been established, I don't question or doubt those anymore. We realize it as a truth and we move on. So once we have that clarity, there's no point in doubting anymore. So now, as we said, why can't we question reasoning? I know what is real and truth and fact through reasoning. Without reasoning, I wouldn't be able to think, I wouldn't be able to question, I wouldn't be able to make any judgments. And reasoning is what we call a self-evident truth. These are things that people accept regardless of their ideology or religion. Everybody, even the atheists, accept them. So for example, we take as a self-evident truth that we exist. I exist, and other people, other objects, other beings exists. My mind exists. I can know myself and I can know other things. I self-evidently accept that I can gain knowledge, that other things can be known. If I don't accept this, then I'll just be lost in an infinite loop of confusion. If I say to myself, you've probably heard this before, how do we know that this isn't all just an illusion, right? Maybe we're in the matrix. I mean, if we think like that, we'll never have any truth. We can't rely on anything. I can't even rely on that doubt that I'm having. So I have to doubt the doubt, which means that maybe it's real, maybe it's a constant loop of confusion. So there are certain things that we accept. Space exists, time exists, matter exists, energy exists. We accept that the natural world operates according to set, fixed, unchanging rules. Like you don't wake up every morning wondering if gravity is going to work. Right? You don't wake up, chaining yourself to your bed, in the morning gravity might not work and I might fly into space. You don't think like that. We know, and this is how science operates, that we accept as a self-evident truth that these laws will always be in effect. We accept what's called the law of non-contradiction. For example, an action cannot be good and evil at the same time. Something cannot be true and false at the same time. Or that the whole is equal to the sum of its parts. Like, if you take an apple, you cut it in half, you're not going to have two apples, right? The parts don't become greater than the whole. We accept that absolute knowledge exists and can be known. If we don't have any absolute knowledge, we again fall back into that state of confusion. And we also accept as a self-evident truth that we as human beings, we choose our deliberate actions. That we are responsible for the actions that we consciously decide to perform. So of all of these, everyone accepts that reasoning is the basic self-evident truth which allows us to realize all of these other self-evident truths. It allows us to know all of these other self-evident truths. And the world's belief systems, whether it's different religions or even non-religions like atheism and so on, they have similarities, but sometimes they obviously contradict each other. When they contradict each other, this will lead to differences in the concept of right and wrong, what's moral and what's immoral, what's a person's right, what's a person's responsibility. They'll have different concepts of this. And the reasoning and the self-evident truths, what they do for us is they bring us to common ground so that we can figure out where we became divided. So if I'm having a conversation with, let's say, a Christian brother or a Christian sister, I have to understand what are our common sources of knowledge? What are the self-evident truths that we both accept? So of course we accept all the things about existence and space and time and so on, but we also accept that God exists. So we can build on that foundation. But it might be very difficult for me to argue with my Christian brother using the Quran because they don't accept the Quran. So I have to take a step back and see where we have common ground and then build on that. Or if I'm talking to an atheist friend, now I have to know what's our common sources of knowledge. They don't accept the Quran, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in revelation. So I have to go further back, see where we have common ground, and then start building up from that. And this is the way that the Prophet ﷺ and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, you'll notice that whenever you read their debates, when they used to talk to people, this is what they did. First, they would ask the people certain questions so they could establish that common ground and say, do you accept this? Do you accept that? And then once they got them to confirm and admit that they accept these things, then they would build on that foundation. So this is what the self-evident truths and the sources of knowledge give to us. For example, Allah says in Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 64, an invitation to the people of the book, قُل, say, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, O people of the book, Ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawa'in baynana wa baynakum. Come to an equitable proposition between us and you. See, we have a similar source of knowledge. Allah na'buda illa Allah, that we do not worship anyone except Allah. وَلَا نُشْرِكَ بِهِ شَيْئًا, and we do not associate anything with him. وَلَا يَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ, and that we do not take anyone for lords besides Allah. And of course, the Jews say this, they would accept this. Yes, we believe in this. If you say this to a Christian, say, of course we believe in one God. So now we establish that we believe in one God. We don't associate anything with him. Of course, the details matter. They have different details about this, but they confess monotheism. So it's saying, let's start from a common ground and then we build on that. So reasoning, we say in Islam that reasoning leads to belief in God. Reasoning leads to religion. And religion gives us the morality that we would not be able to have without religion, which we'll explain later on. Some people say, well, I don't need God to have morality. I don't need God to know what's right and wrong. No, this is rationally impossible. And inshallah, on day 3, we're going to be talking about this. So all of the world's problems are caused by abandoning reasoning and abandoning religion. And the only way that we can have peace and justice in our world is to return to both of these. So now we say that the only way to have truth, the only way to have justice in the world is to have religion, to have God. So now somebody can ask a valid question. If abandoning God and abandoning religion leads to falsehood, how do atheists make accomplishments in science? This is true, isn't it? I mean, people all across the board, with believers and non-believers, they make accomplishments in science. But if we say that all truth is from God and the atheist rejects God or doesn't accept God, how do they make these accomplishments? We say that an atheist rejects God's moral and spiritual and religious laws, but they accept God's natural laws. They don't identify, they don't recognize it as God's natural laws, but it is God's natural laws. We are the ones who create a false division in our minds between religion on one side and natural law on the other side. Sometimes we do this unconsciously as believers ourselves. We say religion here, science here. Faith here, fact over here. So we do this ourselves. We imagine religion is from God and science somehow comes from some other source. But God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the author of natural laws just like He's the author of the Quran. The Quran is authored by God, the natural laws are authored by Allah as well. And it is reasoning that helps us to resolve these bad arguments and to arrive at a correct belief. And what is a belief itself? So now we know that we need to have the proper sources of knowledge so that we can have proper belief. Well, what's a belief itself? It's very important that when we have these discussions, whenever we're setting this foundation, whenever you're having a discussion with somebody else, please make sure that you define your terms very, very clearly. You could both be saying the word God and mean two different things. You both use the word reasoning and faith and belief and science and mean completely different things. So always define your terms very clearly. So what do we mean when we say a belief? A belief is when the mind judges an idea as true or false. This is how we're going to be using the word belief. We don't use the word belief as accepting something without evidence, which is how it is commonly depicted in the Western world, or maybe in other places as well. They say when you have believed something, that, oh, this is just you accepting it for all those other reasons that we said before, reasons other than being backed by evidence. Belief, according to them, is not backed by evidence. But we say that a belief is when the mind judges an idea as true or false. So you believe right now that the sun is shining outside. We can see it, and you believe it. We believe that we're inside Imam Ali Masjid right now. This is a belief that we have. We call it as true. And when it comes to belief, we cannot force other people to believe just like they can't force us. People can be forced to confess to something, but force cannot be used on that person's internal decision, their conscious decision. So our beliefs, they cannot be forced, but they can be influenced. And there's many ways that they can be influenced. One is, of course, a very convincing argument. A person can be convinced by himself or by herself or someone else to change their belief. Deception can also affect a person's belief. A person is given false information in order to arrive at a wrong conclusion. Or sometimes we rely on authorities. We take that responsibility of researching and finding the evidence for that belief, and we put it on somebody else, and we trust their authority. So we say there's experts. We decide who to accept as an expert. We take parents and family as authorities, or we take society, or entertainment, or even our emotions as an authority, where our anger or our pleasure will determine who and what we trust. So if I'm angry with somebody, even if that person is right, I will decide, no, that person must be wrong because I'm angry with him. Or if somebody makes me happy, it could be somebody who spews nothing but falsehood, but as long as that person makes me happy, I'll believe him. So culture and tradition also play a heavy role in influencing our beliefs. So next, our beliefs are influenced by what we accept as true. So for example, is truth and reality restricted to only what is material, or does it also include the spiritual realm as well? Or what we accept as evidence, or taking conjecture and lies as truth. Or my beliefs can be affected by my decision to remain ignorant. I have a chance to study and learn, but I don't. I choose to stay ignorant, so because of that, my beliefs either remain the same or they go into a different direction. And also my lifestyle as well can have a major influence on what I believe. Belief and behavior affect each other, because the more I do something, the more I'm prone to believe that that thing is morally justified. Like let's say I hang around some people who drink. I don't drink myself, right? But I hang around some people who do. And this is slowly going to chip away at that aversion, that hate that I have for this action. I start saying, well, you know, let me just sit around with them. I'm not going to drink myself. And then I start sitting with them, well, you know what? These are good people. They're drinking, but they're still good people. Why am I saying that drinking is bad? Maybe I don't do it for myself. It's not for me. So now it goes from the category of being haram and forbidden to go into the category of it's just not for me. And then one day I say, you know what, these people are really nice and they drink, and I'm going to feel either I'm going to feel awkward or I'm going to disrespect them and make them feel uncomfortable by being the oddball and not drinking. I'm just going to take a sip. What's the harm? So now it goes from it's not for me to let me do it one time just to please these people. So this is the step-by-step progression where eventually the person is drinking just like everybody else because of the lifestyle and the environment that they chose for themselves. So what can I do about my beliefs? Number one, I have to make sure that my sources of knowledge are correct. Can truth be supernatural, or is it only physical? I have to figure this question out for myself. Does reasoning apply to religion? Does my religion have to make sense? I mean, there's some people who will fight you tooth and nail to say that religion does not have to be rational. You just have to accept it on faith. It's a mystery. Well, we know who some people are like this. I choose my friends and my environment, for the example that we just gave. I choose to rely on reasoning rather than emotion. I choose to rely on authority. I choose to give importance to things like culture and tradition. I choose to learn or to stay ignorant, and I choose to value worldly gains over the truth. Sometimes I know the truth, but I will make a decision to go against it because of some worldly gains that I might think I'm going to achieve. For example, like we know the Umar ibn Sa'd at Karbala. He knew that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in the right. He knew for a fact 100%, but he wanted that governorship. So he did what he did for that worldly gain, even though he knew what the truth was. So reasoning is the most powerful defender of Islam. Reasoning is the property of the believer. Nobody has a monopoly on reasoning except the believer. Anybody who says they have reasoning, but they do not arrive at monotheism, they do not arrive at Islam, either they do not have reasoning or their reasoning is deficient and they fell off at some part of the way. So somebody could believe in God, alhamdulillah, reasoning got them there. They believe in monotheism, yes, reasoning got them there. But now they believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That they left reasoning at some point in order to arrive at this belief. So reasoning will lead a person towards Islam and lead a person towards belief in the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we should love reasoning. We should pray for stronger reasoning. There's narrations that say that when Allah wants good for somebody, He gives them understanding. in religion. We should pray for stronger reasoning, and we should teach reasoning just like we teach the Quran, just like we teach ourselves how to pray, the rules of Islam. We have to emphasize and teach reasoning in this way. So we're going to take a little break, inshallah. Before that, if anybody has any questions, we'll entertain some questions. Otherwise, we could take a break and we'll come back for round 2, inshallah. Good? Okay. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.